This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Bark and Swagger on Pet Life Radio. I'm Jody Miller-Young, your host. Senior dogs. Who needs us more? For love, for caring, and for a comfortable environment. Yet it's the seniors who are often dumped at shelters when they become too difficult to care for or their owners are moving away. After sometimes years of living with one person or family, they find themselves alone in a strange environment, often in a cage. Seriously, it's one of the worst scenarios. My guest today, Kristen Peralta, and her husband Marc are doing their part to make sure some of these babies land well. In 2017, they started Vintage Pet Rescue, focusing solely on seniors in need and, wait for it, vintage furniture. I learned about them from People magazine, who did a profile on the couple and their rescue in April. So when we return from a short break from our sponsor, we'll meet Kristen, learn how the Golden Girls inspired her and Marc to start Vintage Pet Rescue, well, sort of, and hear how these fortunate babies are living, as well as what Kristen and Marc are doing to bring awareness to seniors' plight. So stick around. There are some very sweet stories ahead. Grab that favorite beverage, get comfortable, and we'll be right back.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynovite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynovite.
Dynovite for life.
Pick up 2 tubes of Doggo Suds.
Get the 3rd tube free.
Peppermint, tea tree, lavender, Doggo Sud shampoo.
Made with all-natural coconut, jojoba, aloe. Great for healthy skin and soft, shiny coats.
But no itchy, harsh chemicals.
Lather up, rinse away.
Try Doggo Suds. Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynovite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back. If you've just joined, you're listening to Bark and Swagger on Pet Life Radio. I'm Jody Miller-Young. Kristen and Marc Peralta have a special soft spot for senior dogs. Their Vintage Pet Rescue focuses solely on this underserved population. Let's meet Kristen and find out more. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Great. Hot out here in Rhode Island, but we're doing great.
Oh boy, it's hot here in Florida too. It's very hot. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm very excited to introduce our listeners to what you and Marc are doing. And I guess I have to start with Rue, a very special baby who inspired you and Marc to start Vintage Pet Rescue. Tell us about Rue McClanahan.
Yes, Rue McClanahan was technically our very first hospice senior dog that we took into our home way before we were a nonprofit, way before Vintage Pet Rescue was even an idea. We had met this little dog. She was a little Maltese with one bad leg and a little bit of an attitude. We met her at an adoption event, and originally they said she was 8 years old. She didn't get adopted there, so she did end up going to Marc's shelter in Los Angeles. And after a day there, he asked me, how I would feel about bringing her into our home. So I said, absolutely. She came to live with us, and at that time we had 2 pugs and 1 pit bull and a little Maltese that actually turned out to probably be about 15 or 16 years old.
Wow.
And she wasn't in the best of health. So we thought we'd have her for, maybe a few months, but we just make sure that, those few months were filled with happiness and comfy beds. And she actually ended up living with us for a year and a half.
Wow.
During that time, we just both completely fell in love with her and, her little personality and just, the really ancient senior dogs. And when Rue passed away, we actually went to the shelter the very next day and we adopted another senior dog in her memory. And that is kind of how this whole thing started years ago.
Yeah, you can't just have one. It's
no, you cannot.
Commercial. How did you, to just step back to Rue, why the name? Because she was a golden girl?
Well, her original name when she was at the shelter was Scrappy, and that just didn't fit her. So, yeah, we just, the first day she came home, I said, she looks like a Rue. She looks like, Rue McClanahan. So we named her that after the Golden Girls,
Who
and
also
we actually
had a
ended
bit of
up
an
a
attitude.
few. Yes, exactly. And then a few months later, we brought in a senior Pekingese who we named Estelle after one of the Golden Girls. So it kind of was a little bit of a trend going on.
I can see that. And on your site, I see how you for each of the dogs that you have at the rescue, you have like the show that they're into and the favorite movie. I mean, it's really cute. You'll see when you go visit their site, everybody listening. This is kind of interesting. You refer to Vintage Pet Rescue as a retirement home and hospice for senior dogs, and something that's usually reserved for human seniors. Was it a conscious decision to present the rescue in that way?
Yes, it was. And I mean, there are thousands of rescues across the country who,
Yes.
take dogs from shelters and then adopt them out. And I've volunteered with a lot of them. I support a lot of them, and it's wonderful. But I really wanted to be a little different. We're more of a sanctuary without tons and tons of acreage. So it really, the word retirement home is really what just popped into my mind. We take these dogs from shelters or from families, and our goal isn't really to find them new homes. That could happen, but our goal is really just to, keep them healthy here and keep them happy, and they live, in a pack environment. We're cage free, and they make friends, and we have a lot of volunteers that come and help with walks and cleaning. So that's really kind of the retirement home aspect is really kind of my brainchild around the whole thing. We're a little different. We're not your average rescue.
It's brilliant because it brings the heart of what you're doing into the way you describe what you're doing. So I think it works really, really well. And the environment that they live in, I mean, your home is in an old church, right?
Yes. So
Tell us about that.
Moved. We've actually only been here since November, so it's been a handful of months since we moved in, and it's an old church from the 60s that I think operated for maybe 10 or 15 years, and then it was abandoned for 10 years. A couple did move in, and they turned it into a single family residence, and they lived here for 15 years, and then we were lucky enough to be able to purchase it and move in November. And it's so unique. Everybody that comes in to visit says, wow, this is just the perfect place for you guys because it's got, two main entrances. It's a big open floor plan. The downstairs goes right out to the big fenced backyard. There's laundry. There's a second kitchen. So we have dogs upstairs. We have dogs downstairs. They can, we have a kitchen. I mean, it really is, the perfect place for us. And it helps that the town we live in does not have a dog limit. So we just license all the dogs, and they know us at town hall, and they're happy to license all the dogs. So yeah, it really is. It's a very, very unique space, but it's perfect for us.
Amazing. Do you have pictures of this environment that the dogs live that we can share with our listeners?
I can. I post. We're very active on social media, so I post a lot on Facebook, a lot on Instagram, and there are pictures of the space on there, but I'll start posting some more of, the actual space. Mostly my focus is the dogs, but I will post more of the actual space.
Perfect. And we'll let listeners know before we say goodbye later where people can find you so they can always check that out. Absolutely. Now, there's a vintage furniture component as well, which I think is super cool. How did that come to be? Do one of you have a passion for that?
We both do, actually. That's one of the things my husband and I really bonded over. We love going to flea markets and antique shops and thrift shops and just we really like, old 50s, 60s radios and cameras and televisions. We just kind of love that. And that's where the name Vintage Pet Rescue came from. I mean, we talked for months about a name, and it just kind of stuck. And one time, I mean, I was on Pinterest, obviously, trying to find some fun projects. And I saw somebody had made a dog bed out of an old television set. And I said, well, that'd be a fun project. So I went hunting for a television set. I found one on the side of the road in Los Angeles and, got to work and made a little doggy condo out of it. And the response on Facebook was amazing. People loved it. So then I just started kind of making more and making dog beds out of old drawers and out of suitcases. And it kind of just fits with what we're doing, like it's repurposing old dogs and repurposing old furniture. It kind of fit in perfectly.
It so works, but it's left field, but it makes perfect sense. So people can buy these repurposed pieces that you create?
Well, sometimes I'll have them at, at events that we have, but mostly I just use them. I'll give them out as gifts or for auction items for different events. We don't have like an Etsy store set up for them just because it's too hard to obviously ship something that big. But most of the time we'll just have them at local events, or I'll give them to different charities for their raffles or their auctions.
That's lovely. You and Marc sound like you are absolutely made for each other, and you actually met in a very apropos way. Tell us about that.
So Marc, he works for Best Friends Animal Society, and he so he was in Los Angeles. He ran their NKLA Center and their Mission Hills Center in Los Angeles, both shelters out there run by Best Friends. And I was actually volunteering with a rescue group in Los Angeles, and we were one of the first groups to move into the NKLA Center and have kennels there. So I actually met him in a dog shelter, in an animal shelter, and we, kept in touch, and we had our first date a few months later, and we were actually married at the Best Friends Sanctuary in Utah. So with our dogs there. So
oh my God.
It's so really it kind of, I didn't have any dogs when I met him. He had 2 pugs, and then our family just exploded and grew by huge numbers, and that's where we are now.
This is such an incredible story, because for anyone listening who hasn't heard of Best Friends Animal Sanctuary in Utah, they're famous. They took the Michael Vick dogs. They rehabilitated most of them. They are known for being able to rehabilitate dogs that others don't want to touch. They are an incredible property of incredible people. They've been around a very long time. And the NKLA facility is a very important key shelter for them. I've been reading about them for years. I had no idea that Marc ran that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's Best Friends, out in Utah. If anyone ever has a chance to go visit, it's 3 hours from Vegas. It is a magical place. It is so special and gorgeous. And NKLA is also, if you're in Los Angeles and you haven't gone there, it's also just, it's beautiful. It's not what you expect an animal shelter to look like. It looks like you're walking into a beautiful rental on Cape Cod. It's really nice. They did a great job.
Oh my God, it makes my heart full just to even hear this. We're going out to Los Angeles in September, so I think I'm going to do that.
Oh, yeah, you have to. It's wonderful.
Totally. We're going to take a short break for our sponsor, but when we come back, there are some great stories to talk about regarding the dogs that are fortunate enough to be living with you at Vintage Pet Rescue. So everybody, don't go away. Just refresh that beverage, and we'll be right back.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back, right after we kibble a little with our sponsors.
Has your pet ever suffered from digestive issues, anxiety, or joint pain? We want to address these issues and more with high-grade CBD oil from Alpha, made specifically for your furry friends. Using Alaskan salmon oil as a carrier, Alpha Pet's 500 CBD oil is lab-tested for quality, consistency, and safety. Plus, we are giving Pet Life Radio listeners 25% off and free shipping with code PL25 for a limited time. So visit myalphacbd.com/dogs now. That's my, alphacbd.com/dogs. Because your furry friends are family.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
If you've just joined, welcome back. We're talking with Kristen Peralta, co-founder with her husband Marc of Vintage Pet Rescue. There must be some great stories about the antics of some of these dogs. I was reading on your site, Franklin, that face, oh my God, and that he's 18 years old and was found as a stray. I mean, hard to believe that he actually survived. Tell us about the stories. Yeah, tell us about some of these stories.
Well, like you said, Franklin, he is such a character. I mean, we think he's a Shih Tzu. He might have some gremlin in him. It's hard to tell. But he is the typical, get off my lawn old man. And he just, if he's not happy, you hear about it. He will bark and bark until he gets what he wants. But he is just, everyone loves him. Everyone on Facebook and Instagram they adore Franklin, probably because they don't have to put up with his barking. But he is so special. One time he was sleeping on the bed before my husband got in. He was sleeping on Marc's pillow. Marc went to move him, and Franklin was so upset that Marc slept on the couch because he didn't want to move Franklin.
I love Marc already.
Yeah, so he just slept on the couch because Franklin was comfortable.
Of course, can't move the baby.
Yes. He is special. I think everyone asks me what my favorite thing is, and my favorite thing about running this is when we bring in a new animal and they form a bond with another dog that we have here. Yeah. And it happens all the time, and it's so sweet. And the most special one, I think, is one of the first dogs we took in when we moved to Rhode Island was this little white Chihuahua named Nougat. And I almost didn't take him because he was pretty aloof at the shelter. He wanted nothing to do with me, and he didn't seem very friendly. So I almost didn't take him, but I thought, he's only 7 pounds. I mean, what? Yeah, sure. Let's take him. He's adorable. So I brought him home, and, within 6 hours, he was attached to me. And then within probably 3 days, he met and fell in love with our pug Clarence, who Marc actually had before I met him. Mm-hmm. And they are completely inseparable. Anywhere Clarence is, Nougat is right next to him. And sometimes he's sleeping on Clarence or under Clarence or right next to him. And it's the cutest thing I've ever seen. They're definitely soul. I don't know if Clarence notices, really, but Nougat is very attached to Clarence, and it is just it's so special. And
it is.
I just think it's adorable.
It is, because these dogs who, have been displaced, whether they've been living on the street or they've been living with their person or their family, and all of a sudden they find themselves, in a shelter, in a cage. To be able to form a bond is so important for their emotional well-being and helps the transition, I would imagine, tremendously. So that is really lovely, lovely to hear.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. What are some of the most common issues that arise from caring for seniors?
Well, I think one of the main things that you have to deal with seniors is incontinence. So them, peeing in the house or pooping in the house, which is actually, I would say, one of the main reasons a lot of seniors get brought to shelters in the first place. If the dog's having accidents in the house and people don't really know, what to do, or they just don't want that happening, we are constantly cleaning. I mean, we never stop cleaning, and we have a lot of dogs who, have incontinence issues. The best thing ever invented for male dogs are belly bands.
I know. I live by them.
Put around. Oh, they're wonderful. And they would help so many people. I mean, it is a little bit of maintenance, keeping up with it, but they're so wonderful. But yeah, incontinence issues are definitely something that we deal with a lot. We deal with a lot of kidney issues. Unfortunately, as they get older, their kidneys stop functioning. at 100%. So, their kidney values go up, and especially if they're not drinking a lot of water, that can cause some issues. Obviously, blindness is a big issue that we deal with, deafness, and standard, pretty much everything. I was actually, it's funny, Mark was at the vet twice today, and I was at the emergency vet once.
Oh, wow.
Just in one day. So unfortunately we just took a little 15-year-old girl a few weeks ago who we knew had heart issues. So we, had an echocardiogram scheduled, but today she started to kind of have some trouble breathing and have some heart issues. So she's spending 2 or 3 days at the emergency hospital on oxygen and trying to get her back up to speed. So, but honestly, we're at the vet all the time. Yeah, all the time.
It costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to run a rescue properly and take good care of these babies. So we're going to talk about where people can find you. Every little bit helps if people are, want to donate, any listeners want to donate. So you talked about running to the vet. You talked about doing a lot of cleaning. What else is involved in your full-time side job of running Vintage Pet Rescue?
Yeah, so it's a small operation. It's basically me and Mark and a handful of volunteers to do everything. So when I'm not, running to the vet or cleaning or taking care of the dogs, I'm really trying to kind of build Vintage Pet Rescue, working on our social media, trying to get more followers, trying to fundraise it's constant fundraising. I'm in charge of the marketing, so making, new postcards. We actually just got a logo made, so now I've made postcards and banners, and we have, an event coming up, so it's, going to be nice for that. T-shirts, just pretty much anything you could think of that a business does, I'm doing myself for Vintage Pet Rescue.
Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot, but you're doing a great job. So
thank you.
You're welcome. So are any of these dogs adopted out? I know that it's not an intention when you take a dog in to get it adopted out, but are they adopted? I think I saw a couple of permanent foster care situations with the dogs.
Yeah, so we're still trying to figure out exactly how we're handling this. Right now, what I say is, when we take a dog in, the intention is that we are keeping it for the rest of its life. But there are certain exceptions. We have, sometimes we take in a dog and we don't know much about the dog, and maybe the dog isn't good with other dogs, or we are kind of like, okay, this dog is a great dog, but really more of likes people more than dogs. In that case, we will actively try to find that dog a new home. We've had a few cases. We just had one. We took a dog that they said only had 3 to 6 months to live. He was only 6 years old, but he had a diagnosis of cancer. They gave him 3 to 6 months. So we said, okay, we'll take him in. We'll make sure he's happy for 3 to 6 months. We've had him for 9 months, and he just had an oncology appointment yesterday that gave him the all clear. So
wow,
he's healthy, and he's only 6. So we're going to find him a home.
Amazing. Wow. What a nice surprise.
So things like that where we can kind of be fluid. We took in a pug with a horrible skin condition, and now that he's healthy, and he's only 7, he doesn't need a retirement home. So we did find him a home. So things like that where, we're kind of fluid with. We're not, I don't have all the dogs up on Pet Finder. We're not taking applications. I just don't have time for that at this point. We don't do adoption events, but when a dog really should be in a home, we're finding them that perfect home.
Yeah. So that me reading about a formal adoption program being started this year, it's really more of a fluid situation for you.
It is. And the formal adoption program that I really want to start is that I'll actually probably start taking dogs in specifically to adopt them out. So I'll reach out to shelters, and I'll probably take in dogs, and then we'll just pretty much foster them until we can get them adopted out. But most of the dogs that we have here are just, our permanent residents until, unless something changes.
Right. Sounds fantastic. So I want to let everyone know that Vintage Pet Rescue has an Amazon wish list. Tell people how they can find your wish list.
Yes, so if you go to vintagepetrescue.org, and then there's a donate tab, you can find our wish list that way.
Perfect. And you can also learn more about Vintage Pet Rescue on that site and see and read the stories about the dogs and see their vintage furniture, which is wonderful. What about social media? Where can people find you on social?
Yep, so we're on Facebook if you just search for Vintage Pet Rescue, and on Instagram at vintage_pet_rescue.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kristen, for taking the time to share the wonderful things that you and Marc are doing with me and our listeners, and keep up the amazing work.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
I'm really glad. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to our producer, Mark Winter. Mark, you make it sound great. We love you for it. My passion is living stylishly and animal rescue. So tune in next time to discover the designers, home decor, styles, and rescue stories I love. And don't forget to visit me at barkandswagger.com, where you'll find great fashion, shelter stories, and more. So until next time, when fierce fashion calls, bark and swagger.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.